I'd like you all to give a warm welcome to Ruth Hesse, who is art critic, was the editor of the Australian Art Review, writes for a number of publications.
That's enough.
And she can do the rest of it.
Thanks, Adrian. God, they got to do this. Now they're making me stand on a box, but I have cobbled something together. I'm usually capable of extemporising, but on this important occasion I thought I'd better write something down. I've known Adrian not very well for several decades, and for the past year, extremely well. I've been working with him on the book, the sum of his life's work so far, and I'm sure there's much more to come. And that's actually where all this started. As a journalist with a passionate interest in Indigenous culture, I was constantly stumbling across Adrian and his Cooee Emporium during the 80s and 90s. Would you like to stand here, Adrian? It was such a cool place, and he became my go-to expert whose knowledge didn't come from books, like a lot of mine and other journalists, but from constant travelling across Australia and the hundreds of friendships he made during those adventures. When he packed up and left Oxford Street, I wrote a piece about the work he'd achieved there for the Sydney Morning Herald. A couple of years later, when I was editing Australian Art Review, Adrian became a regular columnist, and we tussled over many an article, a process which led him to regard me as, I'm not sure if this is a euphemism for something much stronger, a tough bitch. Adrian was at the point in his life when decades of experience was starting to add up into something we often call a body of work. And it was to become a much dismembered body as Adrian wrestled with its many parts and the enormous amount of knowledge they represented. The 100 top Aboriginal artists was originally going to be part of the book, but this massive tome had grown so gigantic as to be unwieldy. So through a process of what I would call integrated debate, it was decided that this component was perfectly suited to becoming a website, a suitably fluid and continually replenishing platform. And so, with the help of a dynamic team, the Australian Indigenous Art Market Top 100 Artists was created over the course of 5 years. The bonus is there are over 150 profiles, and it will more likely be 200 very shortly. There's no doubt, in my mind, that Adrian is the right person to have done this. Anyone who knows him knows that Adrian is absolutely body and soul devoted to championing Indigenous art and, more importantly, Indigenous artists. Very few other topics had hope of engaging his interest for more than a few hours. A very wise old silverbeard, not this one, once pointed out to me that if you want to find a way to understand this mysterious life on earth we all enjoy without having a clue what the point is, you can look at it this way. We are each the sum of everyone we have ever met. It's an interesting way to think about identity. Identity being a constant worry to our present modern Australian culture. Who are we? What are we? Where do we belong? Where are we going? Where have we been? Aboriginal people in Australia seem to have a very strong sense of themselves, which is quite different, it often seems, to that of people of European descent. And it's through their amazing art that they communicate a unique sense of this, of what it is to live on this huge and extraordinary continent. If I look at the beautiful montage of faces which have been used to create the identity of this website by Leon Wilson, who's here somewhere, I know that Adrian knows each and every one of them intimately. If he hasn't met them, he's met their friends and family. More likely, he's sat around a campfire out in the desert under a sky bristling with stars, talking late into the night. He's played cards with them and played with their kids and helped them with travel arrangements and sat patiently under trees for hours with them to escape the heat. He's done everything he could to help them when troubles arose, and in return, they have helped him. It's been a wonderful opportunity for a nice Jewish boy from the eastern suburbs. Valerie once described him to me, and that's how he started off. But if you want to know who he is today, he's the sum of all the artists he has ever met. And I know that Adrian doesn't treat this privilege lightly. He knows how lucky he's been to know these people. Adrian is obviously great at friendship, which is what this whole thing is a tribute to as well. And I might add, like any successful man, he's more than adept at surrounding himself with clever, dynamic women. Amazing the way he does it. Firstly, Anne. Since working on the book, I've come to understand how much all of this depends not only on Adrian, but on Anne. Then there's truly marvellous Miri and Violet and Sophie, all stars in their own right, and there are plenty of others he can tell you about later. That's enough from me. I'm here to commend Adrian to you and to officially launch the Australian Indigenous Top 100 website.
Woo!
Check him down.
Can I just point out that she wrote that within half an hour, just then, because we only told her about 2 hours ago, so.
So, before we look at this website, actually the idea is, I'm not going to run you through this website now, but we have a monitor and you can look at it and ask Violet to show you through various aspects of it, but you'll probably flip across some pages while I'm talking to you. As Ruth said, there's a lot of people to thank for what has been a 5-year effort in launching this kind of spaceship, which I like to think of it as. Anne always said to me, every time I thought about doing something on the web, that I should talk to Leon. Leon, come here. Leon is my nephew, or Anne's nephew, and I just think he's a genius, what he's done with the material that and I think that when you look through the website and start to use it, you'll see how incredible it is. So, I don't know what else to say. It's a total mystery to me how he does it, but all he said to me was, get to John Furphy from the Australian Art Sales Digest to send me spreadsheets in this form, and I'll just put it with...
Don't talk to me for ages.
And don't... and I will, you know, I'll build it. And so, basically, there were 500,000 words of the, as Ruth alluded, 500,000 words of the book that the publishers of Penguin and Allen and Unwin said, we don't print almanacs, you know, and we don't print reference books anymore, that's much better off on the web. So I said, okay, as I walked away with my tail between my legs, even though they said that other parts of interest, so, and that's what we're working on. So I actually, you know, when I was working for Deutsche Menzies, what I find time and time again is that that collectors and Australians in general were supremely ignorant of the lives of the artists and the way their works found their way into the market. And it was all too easy for certain, you might call them elitists, to characterise certain sources for works as being déclassé or you know, any, and throw pejoratives around like carpetbaggers or backyardists or whatever. However, I'm sitting back thinking, I know these people, I've worked with the artists, I've met a lot of these people in the bush, I know how they treated the artists, and many of them treated the artists well. And many of them worked in communities long before there was an art centre. And yet a lot of that work is being prejudiced in the market because of the opinions of a few people who have a vested interest to portray works other than the ones that come through certain sources as being less valuable than the others. So I felt it was my duty in a way to deprogram and to write a lot of that material down. This site has detailed profiles of more than 130 artists at the moment, and as Ruth said, we intend to build it to the top 200. You know, they say that there's been up to 6,000 Aboriginal artists in the movement. However, very few of them are actually seen in the secondary market, or what you might call the better auction houses. It's a very narrow band of work that's considered to be highly collectible. And so the top 200 artists will just about cover most of the important artists that you'll see in a Sotheby's auction or a Moss Green or a Deutsche Hackett or a Deutsche Menzies auction, Joel Fine Art or whatever. So we have detailed profiles, And then there's a market analysis on each of these artists which discusses the sort of issues like which periods and which styles were the most successful by various artists, which sources for works are discounted in the market, which sources attract a premium price and why. And so that's all in the market analysis section. And then we have illustrated the top 10 artworks at auction by each of these artists to demonstrate truly the best work that's appeared in the secondary market today, which enables people, to a certain extent, collectors, to get an idea of what the value of their work might be, but also they can then having begun their exploration, they can download material on the artists whose work they own, for instance. And we decided to make this site, after some consideration, to be free. Most of these sort of websites cost about $250 a year or more to subscribe, and we thought, no, we won't do that. We'll make all the work, all this 500,000 words and all the information on these artists available without charge, but you won't be able to download it. You won't be able to copy it. You can, I mean, if you wanted to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, you could probably screenshot every page, but I think you'd probably get a very sore finger before you get to the end, and and you'd be being incredibly mean, because what we decided to do was give you, when you register off of the site, 5 free credits, which means $5 worth of downloads for nothing, or 8 if you pre-registered. It seems the site went live about 10 minutes ago. I could have done a countdown. I could have, fooled you, but we decided to just check that it was working first, just in case. But so you'll be able to download the entire profile on an artist like Albert Namatjira, which is up to 16 pages of information about his career, the performance of his works at auction, etc., and see all his most emblematic works, like this work here, which is the highest price ever paid for Albert, which is atypical of his work, but it's a very special painting that was painted very early in his career, and so much more. So for 3 credits, for $3 you can download that whole thing. For 2 credits you can download most of the articles that I write, and I write regularly for art magazines, on the market, and on what's happening in the auctions. I give previews of all the major auctions, so anybody thinking of actually going to an auction, possibly bidding on something, I preview the auctions, and then I do a summary of them. The latest article that's just up, if you go up to the news and articles, the latest one I just published, which is called Alive and Kicking, is basically my review of the Melbourne Art Fair, the Aboriginal Arts Awards in Darwin, and the Cairns Indigenous Art Fair, with also advising people that the most important event that's likely to occur in the history of Aboriginal art, at least in the recent history, will occur later this year when the new wing at the National Gallery of Australia opens with its 11 rooms, which is going to be something to behold, and we hope that it will give a solid foundation to the